Buenos días, señores, o buenas tardes. Aquí estamos nuevamente en otro episodio más, otro webinar de PolarisControls. Ya son las 4 de la tarde, así que el cuerpo lo sabe. Bienvenidos a los amigos de LEA Professional. Tenemos a Bradley Drummond, que tiene a cargo y responsabilidad sobre la parte técnica de LEA Profesional. Y también tenemos a Scott Robbins, que tiene a cargo todas las ventas a nivel mundial fuera de Estados Unidos, toda la parte de Latinoamérica, Asia, Europa, etcétera. Así que hoy promete ser una presentación muy interesante con productos de nivel mundial para proyectos comerciales, proyectos residenciales, etcétera. Si tienen preguntas, vayan escribiéndolas en el chat, las iremos contestando a medida que vamos haciendo la presentación. Sin más por el momento, los dejo con Bradley y Scott. Bradley and Scott, you guys are on. Welcome to our last webinar of the day. This is day 1 of 3. All you.
Thank you, Ariel. Nice to meet you all. Really appreciate your time. I'll turn it over to Bradley and let him do his thing.
All right. Thanks for the nice introduction there, Ariel. So yeah, just a real quick, what we're going to go through today. I've got some slides here to show you, talk a little bit about our company, a lot about our products, some features we have, a little bit that's coming soon. At the end, I'll go through a little bit of a demonstration of our user interface for the amplifiers, and then at the end, we'll have some question and answer session. So with that, I will get started. There we go. So yeah, we are LEA Professional. So it is pronounced LEA, not LEA, but the LEA actually does stand for Loud Enough Audio. So we're a bit of a new company, but we've been shipping some product almost 2 years now. And we've got some great amplifier products, and we're doing things a little bit differently. We have some unique technology, some things we've come up with that nobody else is doing that we think will help with some installations and some problems that come up all the time. So we just take a quick look at our senior leadership team here. At the top, this is Blake Augsburger. He's our founder and CEO. A little bit of the history with Blake was back in 2000, he became the president of Crown International. In 2006, he was promoted to be the president of the entire Harman Professional division. So he ended up running the division there for about 10 years, took it from a $400 million per year business to about a $1.1 billion business during that time. In 2016, he kind of semi-retired, was looking for a different opportunity. And a couple of years later, actually, Harman shut down their office in Elkhart, Indiana. So we are based in South Bend, Indiana, which is very close, basically just the next town over. And so Blake saw a nice opportunity there, and there was a lot of staff from that office that was now out of a job. So he spoke to a lot of the engineering members, some of the marketing and sales, and put a business plan together and started up LEA Professional with a lot of the staff that was formerly at the Harman facility there. So we officially started the company in January of 2019. And we've got some great products. So here we've got our Connect series amplifiers. So these are IoT cloud-enabled professional audio amplifiers. We call them the Connect series because they have 3 ways to connect, 3 ways that you can get connected to them and control them. And they come in 2 different sub-series. So we have the Network Connect series models and the Dante Connect series models. Now both of those share mostly the same feature set. So they both have DSP, they both have the same number of channel power levels in the models. They both have analog inputs. Just the only difference with the Dante versions is it adds a Dante module in addition to everything else being the same between the 2. So really just one question to ask, do you need Dante or not? And that will point you in which sub-series to look at. So we have two different ways to interface with the amplifiers for control and monitoring. First is the web user interface, the web UI. So this is a web browser page that's hosted locally on the amplifier. So once you're connected to the amplifier on the same network, you can pull this up in the browser of your phone, your tablet, your computer, whatever you want, anything with a web browser, and you can get full control of all the amplifiers very easily in the browser page. So we say that the web UI is for local control and monitoring, so you've got to be on the same local LAN connection, but we also have LEA Professional.cloud. So this is our cloud interface, which is used for remote control and monitoring from any device. So the web UI, you're connected locally to the same network. With the cloud, you can connect to the amplifiers via an internet connection. So you can be anywhere that you've got internet. So as long as the amplifiers have an internet connection where they are installed, then you can set this up and log into them remotely. So if we take a look at the models here, just a quick breakdown, the Dante Connect series models are at the top. The Network Connect series models are at the bottom. Power-wise, we start off at 80 watts per channel. From there, we go to 160 watts per channel. Both of those power levels come in either 4 or 8 channel variants. From there, we go to 350 watts per channel and then up to 700 watts per channel. So both of those come in either 2 or 4 channel models. So all of these are currently shipping. So everything 80 through 700 watts is currently shipping today. We make full rated power at 8 ohms, 4 ohms, 70 volt or 100 volt output on each channel, but these models do drop to a half power rating at 2 ohms. And then later this year, we're going to introduce a larger power amplifier, so a 4 by 1500 watt amplifier. So this is going to be a little bit different. It's going to make full rated power at 2 ohms as well as all of the other loads. It's going to have some more advanced DSP and some other features, which I'll talk about as we go through the list of features on the current products. So looking at the line here, so at the top there's two pictures. There's a 1 rack space amplifier at the top and then a 2 rack space. So everything currently shipping, so 80 watts up to 700 watts per channel. It is in a 1 RU enclosure, so like the very top picture. And then the 1500 per channel amplifier, when that comes out, that's going to be in a 2 RU enclosure, so the bottom picture there. All of our amplifiers, every channel, you can individually select how you want to run each channel. So you can run a low Z, high Z 70 volt, or high Z 100 volt, individually selectable per channel. So you can have one channel run a 4 ohm load, one run a 70 volt load, one run a 100 volt load. However you want to mix it up, you can run it whichever way you want. We have 3 different ways to connect to the amplifier. So the first one is with a built-in Wi-Fi access point. So this way the amplifier creates its own Wi-Fi network and you connect directly to the amplifier without any networking equipment and no wires. Second mode we have is called Wi-Fi mode. So in the Wi-Fi mode, the amp is going to connect to a separate Wi-Fi network. So if you had a separate wireless router or a separate network with an access point on it, you could connect the amplifier to that wireless network. And then the third last way is also wired mode. So you can connect it to a standard wired network, standard Ethernet port on the back of the amplifier. So 3 different network modes that you can use to connect the amplifier or connect with the amplifier. However, only one of those modes can be active at a time. So if you put the amp in wired mode, then the wireless is completely disabled. So no access point and no Wi-Fi. So all of our amplifiers use a universal switch mode power supply. So you can put any voltage in there. We rate them between 100 volts AC and 240 volts AC, but we do all of our testing at plus or minus 15%. So that really means anywhere between 85 volts AC and 277 volts, 50 or 60 hertz. So any voltage within that range, the amplifier will turn on. If you have fluctuations in the voltage, if you have a big drop or a rise up, again, as long as you're within that range, the amp is going to continue to put out proper power and properly power the speakers on the output. So our amplifiers do not offer traditional bridging. So there's no way to combine two channels together to get one with double the power, double voltage. But what we did create is something unique to us that we call Smart Power Bridge technology. So with Smart Power Bridge, what that does is every amplifier, you can enable one channel at a time for Smart Power Bridge. And what that will do is it will double the power out on that channel, but then you still have all the channels running. So if we take a 354 as an example, which is normally a 350 watt by 4-channel amplifier. So let's say channel 1, we turn on Smart Power Bridge. Well, that channel is now going to become a 700 watt channel, and Smart Power Bridge will double the power at either 4 ohms, 8 ohms, 70 volt, or 100 volt. And then the remaining 3 channels, so channels 2, 3, and 4, will still give you, will guarantee at least 85% of rated power. So with the 354, that'd be at least 300 watts on the others. So you turn on Smart Power Bridge, you get a 700 watt channel, and then you get 3 300 watt channels at least. So something a little bit more unique there. You know, we saw a lot of people just needing a little bit more power on a single channel. So if you want to add a subwoofer into a room, you don't have to go to a higher power amplifier and then maybe waste some power on the ceiling speakers or whatever else you're using. Or maybe you've got a 70 volt run, you know, so you've got 4 70 volt runs in a room and one of them's just a little bit more than the others. You want to boost that up so you can turn on Smart Power Bridge on that one channel. So all of our amplifiers have full DSP on board. So parametric EQ, there's limiters, delay, crossover filters. There's a full set of fault monitoring on board the amplifiers. So there's temperature sensors, there's signal presence indicators, there's clip indication, and there's also a physical heartbeat output on the back of the amplifier. So if you need to hook up to something a bit more analog for health status, you can do that. But this is a very smart, very sophisticated amp, and there's a lot of different things you can tie into and look at to make sure that it's all behaving properly. And then lastly here, we also have load monitoring on all the channels. So you can real-time measure the impedance measured on the loudspeaker. And then we're still working on an update here, but pretty soon we'll be offering pilot tone detection as well. So just taking a look at the back of the amplifier here. So this is kind of zoomed in on the back left-hand side of a 704D. So for power, it's a standard IEC power inlet there. It ships with a standard cable, but you can put in a locking IEC cable and it will lock into the connector. So number 2 here, this is the power button. So power button's on the back, all the controls and everything you need to get to is on the back of the amplifier. There's also an LED indicator with the power button that shows you which mode the amp is in. And then our logo, there's an illuminated logo on the front of the amplifier. It matches the same color as this LED power button. Number 3 here, this is what we call our external I/O port. So what we have here is a pin for fault status. So this is where you get that heartbeat health monitoring output on the left-hand pin. Center is a common ground, and then on the right side pin here, we have a remote on and off. So what this does is if you close that pin to ground, the amplifier will turn off. And if you open that circuit, the amplifier will turn back on. So you can hook up a switch or tie this into a GPO port of a processor or a controller. And now you can remotely turn on and off the amplifier. Number 4 here, these are the speaker output connectors. So it is a removable connector, so you can plug the cable in and out once you've got the wire terminated into it. We use 2 different size connectors for these. So our 80 and 160 watt per channel models These will take, it's a little bit smaller connector, but it still takes up to a 12 gauge speaker wire. This one here, 350 watt and above, so 350, 700, and it'll be the same on our 1500. It's a little bit bigger connector, and you can fit up to an 8 gauge speaker wire on those connectors. So now if we look at the right-hand side on the back of the amp here, number 5, these are channel output attenuators. So it's a small knob. You can control the output level of the channels. They are next to the input connectors, but these do control a dedicated gain stage for the output in the DSP. Number 6 here, these are standard analog balanced line level input connectors. Again, it's a removable connector. There's 2 different sensitivity settings, which are set in the web UI, so either 26 dB or 34 dB. And then one nice thing about all of our connectors is we print the pinout configuration on the actual connector. So if you need to make up some cables in the shop ahead of time, you have the connectors. It's really easy to make them up. You don't have to look at the back of the amp or look in the manual. The plus, minus, ground, all those symbols are on each connector. So number 7 here, there's a small button that's labeled Wi-Fi. And I mentioned before that we have 3 different network modes on the amp, but only one mode can be active at a time. And this button will change between network modes. So by default, the amplifier ships out of the box set up in wired mode with DHCP enabled. And this button, when you press it, it will switch between the wired mode and the access point mode, kind of back and forth, just between those 2 modes. If you connect to the amp with one of those modes, and then you configure the Wi-Fi settings, save it, then this button would switch between the Wi-Fi mode and the access point mode. So a little bit different behavior depending on how you want to get connected.
Bradley, one thing I do want to point out, I'll point out in Spanish. Amigos y amigas, es importante que sepan que las entradas que aparecen en los terminales número 6 que están ahí, esas entradas son balanceadas. Los amigos de LEA tienen un convertidor de balanceado a no balanceado como un aditamiento adicional. Básicamente la señal balanceada añade la tierra para asegurar que la señal llegue más limpia al amplificador, especialmente de distancias. Otro punto importante de los conectores es que, como él bien dijo, aguantan, en un caso aguantan hasta el cable número 8 en un tipo de conector y cable número 12 en otro tipo de conector. Es decir, es un conector bastante grande. Es más, voy a buscar uno antes de que se termine la charla. Se los voy a enseñar aquí en esta cámara para que puedan ver que es un amplificador muy fácil de instalar. ¿Ok? Seguimos con Bradley.
Okay. All right, so just continuing on here, and thanks. I think that was a bit about balanced and unbalanced, if I picked up 1 or 2 words. But
That's right. That's right.
All right, well, thanks for helping to continue that on there. So yeah, Wi-Fi button, that'll change between the modes. Number 8 here, this is an Ethernet port for control and monitoring. So if you're in the wired mode, that's where you would plug in. And then number 9, we have 2 ports for Dante. These are only on the Dante Connect models, not on the Network Connect models. And it's a full redundant Dante. So you have primary and secondary. If you need to set up a redundant network, you can do that. And then number 10, there's a small hole there with a reset button. That's to do a factory reset on the amplifier. So what you would do is, while the amplifier is turned on, you press that reset button with a paper clip or something like that. Hold it down for 10 seconds, and the amp will go back to factory default settings. So it's really easy to get connected to the web user interface. So once you get your amplifier connected on the network, or it's creating its own network with the access point mode, the amplifier is going to show its IP address on the front screen, on the front of the amplifier. So once you get your control device connected, so your phone, your tablet, computer, whatever you want to use to connect, so once they're on the same network, all you do is type in the IP address from the amplifier into the address bar of your browser. So even if you have multiple amplifiers connected, you only need to type in one IP address. So the amplifiers use a discovery protocol on the network. So if you connect to one amplifier, it actually discovers all of the other amplifiers and shows them all in the same window. So all you need to do is grab one IP address, and then you're actually connecting to all of the amps on your network. For the Dante Connect series models, we're actually using a standard Audinate Broadway module. So this is it supports 8 inputs and 8 outputs, or 8 transmit and 8 receive channels. You can use either Dante or AES67. To set it up, it's all done in Dante Controller, and it's also compatible with Dante Domain Manager. So if you need some really large systems that require Dante Domain Manager, these will work on those as well. And then we also have a feature that we call Dante On-Ramp. So what we do with the on-ramp is we use the Dante transmit channels, or the output channels. So we take the analog inputs into the amplifier, we send those to the DSP, and there's a full routable matrix there, so you can select the channels that you want, the inputs you want on each channel. But we also send those analog inputs to the Dante transmit channels. So this converts the analog audio into Dante, and then you can send those signals via Dante anywhere else on your Dante network. So you can share them to another amplifier. You could send them back to a processor. So say you've got a DSP, you run out of analog inputs, you could send them in Dante to the DSP, process it for the zone, and then send it in Dante back to the amplifier. Got a big list of specifications here. This is for our 80 watt per channel through 700 watt per channel models. I'm not going to read through all of this information, but I will just highlight a couple things. So we designed these amplifiers here in our office from the ground up. So we wanted them to be a very high quality, very good sounding product. There's very low distortion. So our THD plus N is 0.1%, and that's referenced 20 hertz through 20 kilohertz. So that's extremely low. Frequency response is very flat. We're at plus or minus 0.5 dB. The DSP latency, sometimes that's an issue with products, but we have less than 1 millisecond of latency with the DSP under any condition, so no added latency there. That's really going to be any issue. And our DSP is a very high quality, we use an Analog Devices Sigma DSP chipset. It runs at 96 kilohertz, so very high sample rate, very good quality, good sound coming out of the DSP. For our crossovers, we have up to 48 dB per octave, IIR, Linkwitz, Riley, Butterworth, and Bessel filters, so very, very high slope if you need that. We have 8 parametric EQ filters per channel, and then you can select up to 100 milliseconds of delay per channel for speaker time alignment processing. Here, if we look at our 1500 watt per channel models, there's going to be some differences. So this will be a little bit larger in a 2RU enclosure, but we're going to put in some more advanced DSP functionality. So instead of the Analog Devices Sigma DSP, we're upgrading to an Analog Devices Shark DSP. Still running at 96 kilohertz, but this will give us a lot more horsepower for the DSP. So in addition to the 48 dB per octave IIR crossover filters, we'll also be adding FIR crossover filters, so linear phase FIR crossovers. We'll get a lot more EQ per channel, so we're actually planning on doing 8 input EQ filters per channel and 16 output EQ filters per channel. You'll also have the ability to do FIR, custom coefficients to do speaker output calibration, so to calibrate your speakers with an FIR correction. And then we're going to get a lot more delay per channel. So we're still going to have the 100 milliseconds of delay, but we're going to add another input delay for up to 4 seconds per channel. So a lot more delay capabilities on the amplifier. I think the only other difference here is going to be the power input. So instead of an IEC power connector, we're probably going to go with a 32 amp PowerCon connector. So here we've got the LEA Professional.cloud. That's actually the web address for our cloud interface, just www.leaprofessional.cloud. And again, this is for remote control and monitoring of the amplifiers over an internet connection. You don't need to have any local server, no PC, don't need to set up any VPN. You just need an internet connection on the network that the amps are connected to, and you have the ability to bring them into the cloud. So with the cloud, we have also venue management. So you can create any number of venues and then add the appropriate amplifiers into each venue, just so you don't get a long list of amps. You can sort them by the venue they're installed in. And gives you some venue level health and connection status information. And I'll show you all this in the demo towards the end here. So we're utilizing Amazon Web Services for our cloud in the back end. We're using a few services they have, but the one we're relying on the most is called IoT Core. So these are IoT devices. We are communicating in the same manner as many other IoT devices out there in a common platform that AWS has created. We chose this for quite a few reasons. The biggest one was really security. So all of the security is managed by AWS. We are hosted on Amazon's servers, so it's not our own server, it's hosted on Amazon corporate-owned servers. Everything is fully encrypted. There's 256-bit encryption. It's all TLS, very, very secure connections from the amps to and from the cloud and from your control device to and from the cloud. And it's a really scalable system. So you can set up as many venues as you want in your account, and you can add as many amplifiers as you want. It's unlimited. Also, there's a lot of companies utilizing AWS and their IoT platform on their enterprise campuses, their businesses already. So it does make it a lot easier to get approvals to use this because there's so many other services using this as well. The best part, I think, about our cloud is it's completely free. So there is no charge for the cloud. You can set up your account, add as many venues as you want, put as many amplifiers in as you want, and there is no charge. So that being said, we will always have a free version, but we do plan on in the future adding a paid version of the cloud. So with the paid version, it's just going to give more advanced features. So we'll always have the same, sort of basic feature set, which gives you the full, still control and monitoring of the amp. But in the future with the paid version, we'll be able to do things like analytics or higher levels of security for government or projects, things like that. And just look at some more advanced features, things that are really going to use a lot more data that would increase the bill to us. We just want to try to cover the cost for those as we go forward. But like I said, there will always be a free version of the cloud going forward. So from a third-party connectivity standpoint, we have two open APIs. So there's two ways to tie into the amp. One is utilizing a TCP ASCII string protocol. So this is quite common for Crestron systems, things like that, other systems to tie into and control over the network. And then we also have a WebSocket JSON RPC type of API as well. So two different ways that you can communicate with the amplifier. And we use those two APIs to create several third-party control modules. So we have a plugin for QSC/QSYS. We have two modules for Crestron, one in Simple Sharp, one in Simple Windows. We have a driver for Extron. We have a driver for At Lona Velocity, and we just recently released a driver for Utelligy. We're still working on some others. We hope next we'll get to Control 4 and AMX, and then whatever else we think might be helpful for our customers. And speaker tunings. So we know this is an important thing. This helps a lot in setup time and pre-configuring, your systems. So we do have quite a few speaker tunings available. Some of the brands, we don't have all the models, but we do have, pretty much everything that kind of makes sense to be powered with up to 700 watts that we're shipping today. And we're constantly looking at adding more of these. But we do have quite a lot from Bose Professional, from JBL Professional, Martin Audio. We have all of the Sonance professional models. We have some models from Community. We also did, I think, almost all of the James loudspeaker models. We just did some for True Audio, Audac, and also the Yamaha commercial audio. So there's quite a few speaker tunings there. You can download these for free from our website. You don't need to log in or anything. Just go to the product section and you can download all of our speaker tunings. Network security is also an important thing. There is a network security protocol called 802.1x, and this is something that we're sort of in the final testing for. We're getting ready to release this, but this is something that's used a bit more on enterprise level networks, and it's something we're going to be able to support in our amplifiers. So this will be important if you need it for large, corporate installations. If you don't need it, not a big deal. The amp will still connect like normal. And just looking at a bit of a high-level competitive analysis here, we looked a lot at the QSC, CXQ, and CXQN series amplifiers. From PowerSoft, the Due Quattro and Auto Canale DSP plus D. From Bose, the Power Match. And from Crown, the CDI Drive Core and the DCI Dante. From LabGruppen, the D series, and then Biamp, some of their Tessera models. So from a size perspective, how much space in the rack, all of our models currently shipping are in a 1 RU. The 1500 is going to come in a 2 RU. So PowerSoft and LabGruppen also have 1 RU models and some 2 RU. Everything else is in a 2U, so we take up very little space in the rack. We do have individually selectable mode per channel, so you can run a low Z mode or 70 volt, 100 volt on each channel, individually selectable. Most of the competition is doing that these days. However, at our 80 watt per channel and 160 watt per channel, we're the only ones in the industry doing this selectable per channel without having to bridge channels together or add another transformer or batformer on board the amplifier. We do have full load monitoring, and soon we'll have pilot tone detection on board. Most everybody's doing that these days. Same with the Dante and AES67 if you need that. We've got that on our D models, the Dante models. Again, most competition is doing that these days. And then we get to bridging. So we don't do traditional bridging, but we do have our smart power bridge, which we think is a little bit more unique in giving you some extra power on a single channel where you need it without sacrificing any of the other channels. Most competition is just doing traditional bridging, although there are a couple here doing some power sharing type of technologies. And then last one here, cloud control and monitoring. So we are the only ones doing full control and monitoring through the cloud, and also doing it completely for free. So no additional charge for the cloud. So just a little bit here on sustainability. This is a very important thing for us at LEA. So all of our products are RoHS compliant. We have greater than 90% efficiency in all of our power supplies. And we also have an auto standby mode that you can enable on the amplifier. And our auto standby mode works a little bit different than most products. So it will go, auto standby looks at every channel individually. And what it does is it's able to put each channel in standby. And obviously, if all the channels go into standby, then it has the most power savings. But this is a way to save power by putting into standby each individual channel or the entire amplifier. What we also have coming soon is PoE. So our amplifiers can take PoE on the network control port. And the intention for this, once we finish this update, is the PoE will act as a failover power supply for the DSP and the smarts of the amplifier. So what happens is if you have your network switch delivering PoE to the amplifier, you lose power to the venue. Well, then that PoE, if the network switch is on a UPS, a battery backup, it keeps PoE powered to the amp from the battery, and the amp will stay connected on the network. The DSP stays alive. There's no audio that's going to pass out, but you'll at least see that there's a fault in the log, you lost power, and you'll be able to control the DSP while there's no power, as long as you've got that PoE being delivered from a switch that's on a battery backup. So the packaging, it's a 100% recyclable box. We don't have any foam inside of the box, which is nice. All of our user manuals are fully online. You can download them, you can view them online. And then we also have a green power menu in the web UI that shows you real-time power usage and has some of the auto standby settings there. So one thing that's important, we have partnered with a manufacturing company to make these amplifiers for us. It's a German company called Zollner Electronics. They have a few manufacturing sites around the world, and we're actually using one in Costa Rica. So all of our currently shipping amplifiers are made at Zollner Electronics in Costa Rica. So we do ship them from there to our facility in Indiana. So we stock them here and then ship back from there. But these are all made in Costa Rica. Zollner themselves is a automotive and aerospace electronics manufacturer. They make a lot of parts for Tesla in this factory and several other automotive manufacturers. So we're seeing extremely high quality from them, and we're getting some great turnaround and much easier to get products in here than through Asia currently. So that's what I've got for slides. So what I'm going to do now is I will exit this. I'll go over to my browser here, and I'll show you guys some of the web user interface. Get rid of some of these camera views here so I can see the screen. There we go. Okay, so I got my Chrome browser open here, and what I'm going to do is just type in the IP address for an amplifier that I have sitting on my desk. I'm going to hit enter here.
One second. Esta parte ahora va a ser una demostración de cómo funciona el amplificador. Nosotros tenemos la capacidad de hacer esto con ustedes en tiempo real. Tenemos varios amplificadores de estos ya en diferentes sitios. Aquí en la oficina de Miami tenemos uno ya instalado. Hemos hecho esta presentación ya con varios clientes y ha sido de muy buena aceptación. Así que cuando necesiten hacer esto, si no son canal de venta oficial de LEA y quieren serlo, por favor se comunican con nosotros y vemos cómo lo hacemos. Gracias.
All right. So yeah, here, this is where you can access all of the DSP and the digital controls of the amplifier. So what happened here is I typed in one IP address for one amplifier that I've got, but on the left here is the list of all the amplifiers that we have connected on our network here in the office. So where is it? This amp here, this is the one that I actually connected to. It discovered all of the other amplifiers on the network and is displaying them all in this window here. So the whole idea with this left here is it shows you just the basic status of the amplifier. So you can see with this green bar here that the amp is connected. So if it does disconnect, this will show a red bar here. But you get the name of the amp, you get the IP address of the amp, and then you have some information for power status. The smiley face here, this is showing the health status of the amplifier. So if it's smiling like this, the amp is healthy and there's no issues. And then we have two other status for that, one that we call events and one that we call faults. Events is shown with a frowning face, and an event is really just related to the load monitoring. So say you've got an 8-ohm speaker on the line, you're measuring that, and the speaker blows up, it'll change its impedance, and you can set it to give you an event alert that there's something wrong with the impedance measured on that channel. Then we have faults, and faults is shown with a shouting face, I'm not sure if I have any here in that condition right now. Don't think so. But a fault is actually a misbehavior of the amplifier. So something's gone wrong on the amp. It's protecting itself from breaking, or something like that is going wrong. So it'll show you different status of the amplifier. You have the network status here, so it shows you like this with the little tree icon. This means it's in a wired mode. If it's got the signal bars like this, it means it's in one of the wireless modes. We also have the mute indicators here. So the speaker like this, just blue, it means all of the channels are unmuted. If I click on this, it will mute all of the channels, and it shows you here that there's 4 out of a total of 4 channels muted on the amplifier. So I can unmute 2 of these channels, and then it shows you here that there's 2 out of 4 muted in the setup here. You can click on any of these and it brings you into the menu for that. So if you click on the power button here, it brings you into the power supply menu. The smiley face, it's just going to bring you into the DSP section here because there's no issues. If it was in a fault condition, it would bring you to the fault log if it's a different face. Or you can also click on this, we call this the amp info button here, this I. And you can also get to all of the different menus from here. So you could also check out faults or events. I don't have any saved here, but this is where they would be if anything is misbehaving. The network button, this will also give you the network settings here. So you can set up the Wi-Fi information if you want the amp to connect to a separate Wi-Fi network. Ethernet settings, default is DHCP. You can also set up a static IP if you need to do that. And then the wireless access point that the amp creates, by default, there's no password on it. If you want to set up a password, you can put that in here. And then also I mentioned on the back of the amp, there's a button labeled Wi-Fi, and that changes between the network modes. Well, what if you don't want people to change between the modes? So let's say you want to keep it in Ethernet, you want to have a static IP, you can save that. And at the bottom here, you can disable the button in the back. So this will keep the amp in the wired mode, and it won't allow somebody to change it out of that network mode. The last one here, the green power menu. If you click on this, this is where you get the real-time power usage, and we have auto standby settings for the amplifier here. From here, we can click on the actual name of the amp here, and this will bring us into the DSP and all the channels. Basically, at the top here, we have these different square icons, and each one of these is a different section of the DSP. So it kind of follows the normal signal flow from inputs all the way through to the output side. So this first section is for analog inputs. However, no matter which section you click on, you still get this channel view at the top. So we wanted to give easy access to the mute of the channels, to adjust the level of them with these sliders here. Meters, and some health indication for each channel. So those are always available at the top here. This very first section, the inputs, we have both a primary input and a secondary input you can select for each channel. This amp I have is a 354 Dante. So for primary input, I can click this drop down and select any of the inputs to go to this channel. So I can select any of my analogs and any of my Dante if I want here. So I could set this to analog 1. Same on channel 2, I can set just everything to analog 1. Say I've got one input signal and I want to feed that to all of the channels. You can select however you want here. You've also got some level control for these signals here. Sensitivity settings are below this if you're on the analog signal. And then we have secondary. So basically 2 different sources can be set up for the channel. And then we have 2 different ways to override or switch between the primary and secondary. So this bottom one here, signal sensing override, this is really kind of a failover mode. So let's say you have a Dante signal on your primary. You want to set up a backup of that on analog. So what happens in signal sensing, if the Dante on primary, the signal disappears, it will switch to the secondary where you've got an analog backup. When the primary comes back, then it will switch back to the primary. What we've also got is this auto override the primary input, and this works a little bit different. So let's say you've got you know, say some background music on your primary, and you have a paging signal on your secondary. So what happens here is it's going to play primary signal until it detects signal on the secondary. When it detects the secondary signal, it will switch to that signal. Then when secondary signal disappears, it's going to switch back to the primary. So this is where you can have a high priority signal that's not played all of the time. So when that comes in, it will automatically switch to that source. The second object here is channel settings. You can name the channel. You can set your high Z or low Z modes for each channel here. So we can set a 70 volt, 100 volt, a low Z, doesn't matter. Any channel can be set however you want. And then smart power bridge. So we have our 4 channels here. Let's say I need channel 1 to be double power. So I can click on this, 100 volt, it's still going to be double the power. So this is now a 700 watt channel. And these channels will each give you at least 300 watts out. Channel ready here, this is a way to just manually turn on and off your channels if you need to shut them off for any reason.
Bradley, one parenthesis here. Todos los
Yep.
ejemplos que está haciendo aquí aplican tanto para proyectos residenciales como proyectos comerciales. Así que si quieren usar un amplificador de LEA para amplificar un sistema de multisona de sonance, por ejemplo, que necesitan en algunos canales que sean 8 ohms, en algunos canales que sean 70 volts, aquí tienes una solución muy versátil. Estos amplificadores, al tener la selección individual por canal del tipo de conexión que van a utilizarse. Otro punto importante es que al tener la posibilidad de tener 2 entradas conmutadas, dependiendo si una está activa o la otra, puede utilizar timbres, por ejemplo, puede utilizar, no sé, diferentes fuentes para que suenen dependiendo de cuál esté encendida o no automáticamente. Es decir, el amplificador tiene algunas funciones tipo matrices que podemos habilitar en los diferentes canales y con la habilidad adicional de poder indicar el tipo de conexión a las bocinas que tiene. Así que una línea muy versátil, por eso se la queríamos presentar. Seguimos. Go ahead, Bradley.
Okay, thanks. So in the next section here, we've got a signal generator. So this is really just used for testing. So if you don't have any signal hooked up, you can test with pink noise, white noise, or a sine wave tone. And you have individual control of the signal for each channel. We have crossover here. In the crossover section, this is where you can import your speaker tunings or also create your own and export them and save your own. The speaker tunings takes all of the settings from input all the way through all of these blocks for the entire channel, and it will save just a channel, the speaker tuning for just that one channel. So if you have a bi-amplified speaker, there's a low and a high on each channel. You can save each one individually and shift them around. Below this, we have the actual gain for the crossover. You can adjust it here. We have the delay settings, so you can do delay compensation up to 100 milliseconds per channel. Polarity, so you can do positive or negative polarity for the channel. And then below here, you have your high pass and low pass filter. So you enable these with the toggle switch. You can select the filter type here. You can see we can go up to very steep with up to 48 dB per octave filters. And then you just adjust the frequency here. So you can click and drag the slider. You can click up or down on these arrows and it will bump it up or down. Or you can click on the number and you can just type in the frequency you want and click save. We have our EQ in the next section here. So there's 8 filters per channel, very similar to the crossover section. So you just select your filter type, and then you've got adjustment for gain, frequency, and Q factor for that EQ filter. We have limiters in the next section. So there's a peak limiter and an RMS limiter here. The threshold is set in voltage, and then attack and release times are set in milliseconds. So your RMS limiter is really a long-term thermal protection of the loudspeaker. And then your peak limiter is the quick burst protection of the loudspeaker. So these can sometimes be confusing to set up in voltage. We do have on our website a calculator you can download. It's just an Excel sheet. You can enter all the specifications for your speaker and it will give you the limiter settings that you put in here. So quite easy to get these set if you go to our website and download the limiter calculator. In the last section here, we have our load monitoring. So you can enable this and then it will measure the impedance out on the channel. So right now mine says low signal. That's because I'm not playing any signal through the amp. So it does need to play signal through on the speaker to actually measure the impedance here. But what you can do is set a low limit and a high limit. So let's say I've got an 8 ohm speaker, so I can set my low to 6 and my high to 10. So this will be 8 ohms is right in the middle. If it fluctuates a little bit, it's going to say that it's okay. But if it measures below the 6 ohms or above the 10 ohms, then it will report that there's an issue going on with the impedance on this channel. So that's pretty much everything for here. Actually, I'll just show the settings page. I didn't show that yet. Just in the amp settings here, there's a couple helpful things. One is being able to password protect the amplifier. Two, this is where you can, below here, the device name, you can change the name of the amp. You can add in all sorts of helpful information if you want here. You can select the date that you've installed it. Add a whole bunch of helpful information. We also give you the device information, so firmware versions here, serial numbers, things like that are all able to get from here. So this is kind of everything for the local. What I'm going to do is just show about 2 minutes showing the cloud here. So I'm just going to open up a new tab in my browser. I'm going to go to leaprofessional.cloud and I'll show you the remote, the internet level access to our amplifiers. So it's easy to make an account. You can just click register account here. All you need to do that is an email address and a password. It will email you a confirmation code. You type in that code and then you've got an account set up. So I will log into my account here. And you'll see now I have a list of venues. So I have one venue set up here. It's called LEA Office. And you can see I have 1 out of 1 amp online in here. So there's a total of 1 amp registered to this venue and it's online. So it shows you with the green bar and you have the health status just like you see on the amplifier. So now you can see at the venue level what's going on with all your amplifiers. So you can add venues by clicking this plus button. So I can call it just new venue. Click add here and now you can see it saved a new venue. If you want to go inside the venue, you click on it just like you click on the amplifier. And now you see you get a list of the amps that you have set up here. So if we click on this amp, you can see it looks exactly the same like we have on the local connection that I just showed you. But you can see here it's all over the internet. So what I'll do really quick, I'll just show you side by side so that we are live controlling these amplifiers. So I've got the same amp here on my local connection, same amp here on my cloud connection. So if I make any changes, it does go out in both directions. So I change this in the local and you can see it pushes up into the cloud. Let's see if I mute the channel here. You can see now that the local has muted. So it works in both ways. You can be logged in locally and in the cloud. It's really easy to add an amp. So once you're in the venue you want, you click add amp here. It creates this registration token. So you just copy this. And then let's say I want to add my other amplifier here to this venue. So now I can click on this in my local tab here. Click on this info button. We go connect amp to account. And then we're going to paste this token in and click register. So it says, hey, connection success. So what's happening now is it successfully validated that token, and now it's registering the amp to the cloud. So this can take up to a minute or two for it to fully show up in the cloud. But what's happening is it's building that connection to the cloud. There we can see it just popped up here. It adds it in the database and makes all the safe and secure connections over the internet. And then you go in and now you've got full control of the amplifier. It's that easy. So I think that's what we've got here. So we've got a few minutes left, and we'll see if we've got any questions or anything else you guys want me to show you. So I don't know, Ariel or anybody there, if there was questions in the chat that I haven't seen, or we'll see if we can take some
questions. Nope, no questions on the chat. Thankfully you have been very clear, but I will ask some questions that we have been asked before by some accounts. Number one is, can you provide access, remote access, using the cloud, the LEA cloud, for the, let's say a dealer installs it for an end user, and the end user wants to have access to the amplifier using the for whatever reason, using the LEA cloud. Are there more than one users that can access that amp?
Yeah, so currently an amplifier can only be registered to one cloud account. Now, what we're looking at adding in the future is being able to add multiple users to get access to an amplifier or to a venue. But currently, in our free version that's out there now, only one user account for the amplifiers.
Excellent.
But that will hopefully change soon in the future.
Another question that had been asked of us before is, other than the Sonance presets that you have for their professional series, their landscape series, some invisible series, what other manufacturers do you have in your profiles? And if you can share those on your screen, that would be great to see.
Yeah, so on this slide here, this is all that we have currently released. Obviously, we're willing to work with anybody that we can. We can help customers create their own settings as well. But we've got, Bose Professional, JBL Pro, Martin Audio, Sonance Commercial or the Professional Series, Community, the James Loudspeaker, True Audio, Audac, and Yamaha. So in order to grab these, I'll show you where on our website. If we go to leaprofessional.com, at the top here we have our products. So if you go down to Dante Connect or Network Connect, it doesn't matter, just click on that, it'll get you into the amplifiers page. If you scroll down here, we have a downloads section, and the very first one here is speaker tunings. So if you click on this, it will ask you to download a zip file, and the zip file contains all of the speaker tunings that we've created so far in one file. Here I can save this. There we go. Just extract it really quick. So if I open this up, you can see we've got all those here, maybe a couple others as well that aren't on the list. I think Danley is in here. We only have a couple of models from them, but I think that's the only one that's not really listed.
Okay, one of the comments that we've had is the ease of upgrading firmwares your amplifiers have. The fact that you have one firmware update file that will cover your entire family of amplifiers is great. The other thing that's great is that the upgrade, will take 5 minutes, because when you perform the upgrade, it actually tells you that it's going to take 5 minutes. And as soon as those 5 minutes are up, the amplifier is back in business. So that's pretty impressive too. So kudos to your team on those two things.
Yeah, great, thanks.
So we have 3 minutes, and in the 3 minutes, I'd like for you to present 5 selling points that you have with your amp in 2 minutes or less, so that people can do like a slam bam on your equipment? What do you have?
Sure. Okay, so probably the biggest selling point is just the flexibility of the amplifier. So being able to set one channel for 70 volt, another channel for 8 ohms, everything is in a 1 RU, so very compact. Now you have the flexibility to set up really systems however you want without having to add a lot of different amplifiers. So let's say you've got some landscape speakers outside, they're all 70 volt. You want to also do some distributed ceiling speakers that are 8 ohms on the inside. You can now do all of that through one amplifier instead of having to add a 70 volt amp and a low Z amp, and all in a 1 RU. So up to 8 channels, 160 watts in a 1 RU, or up to 700 watts, 4 channels in a 1 RU. So
yep,
lots of flexibility there. And then with the DSP and all of the remote monitoring, the big trend we see is doing, service contracts. So
correct.
customers want to know that they're going to be taken care of by the installers. And this is actually a good way to generate some additional money and say, hey, well, I'll monitor your system once a week, once a day, whatever it is. You can set it up on the cloud, log in, monitor the impedance of the loudspeakers. So now you can see if the amp is healthy and if the speakers are healthy, and you can charge the customers money for this. And then if something breaks, instead of waiting for them to call and be annoyed that something's broken, you already know what they need to fix, and you can be sending a person to the site to fix it before they even realize something is broken and they need to get on the phone. So this can create a lot of ease for your clients when you install things for them, and create some additional revenue.
Perfect. Yeah, we've seen the powerful feature of just logging into the amp remotely. It's really outstanding. You can be preemptive. You can receive emails if something's wrong. You can, coach someone locally or do it remotely to make sure that there's things that are connected, that there's no cut cables to the speakers, things like that. So that's it's very impressive. So our hour is up. Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, the LEA Professional team. We're very happy to have you as part of our brands. And any questions that anyone has, cualquier pregunta que tengan nuestros amigos y amigas que están conectados, nos contactan sin problema, ya sea por email, llamada telefónica, WhatsApp, señales de humo, etcétera. Hoy damos por concluidos el primer día del PolarisControls Summit. Me place comunicarles que tuvimos más de 400 personas conectadas en todo momento. Así que muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Mañana seguimos 9 de la mañana a 5 de la tarde, hora de Miami. Únanse, el segmento en la mañana será de Hi-Fi estéreo. Los segmentos de la tarde serán de teatros. Tenemos un foro muy interesante acerca de teatros y hi-fi mañana de 1 a 2 de la tarde, hora de Miami. Así que nuevamente muchas gracias. Estaremos subiendo los videos de hoy a nuestro canal de YouTube. Estén pendientes en los próximos días. Thank you again, Scott. Thanks, Bradley. Let's do it. Juan Pablo, ¿algunas palabras?
No, estamos, muchísimas gracias a todos. De hecho, ya está en vivo algunos de los videos de hoy en nuestro canal de YouTube. Hay un playlist nuevo creado que se llama 2021 PolarisControls Summit. Ahí van a estar posteados todos los videos de estos 3 días. Ya estamos haciendo la postproducción de los mismos, así que estaremos tratando de ponerlos, nomás los tengamos. Les agradecemos y los vemos mañana. Gracias.
Gracias
a todos.
Nos vemos. Saludos. Thanks,
Gracias
guys.
a todos.
Bye. Oh, muy bien.